Okay, let's just dive right into this. Because the reality we're going to explore today, it isn't some dystopian fiction, and it's definitely not a script from a Hollywood thriller. This is the world you are living in, right now. Welcome to this investigative explainer, where we are going to completely deconstruct the hidden architecture of global intelligence, digital surveillance, and psychological warfare. We're pulling all of this directly from the shocking, first-hand testimonies of a man who lived inside this machine for 15 years. This is part one of our deep dive into the CIA's darkest secrets, and I can promise you, by the time we're done here, the way you look at your everyday life is going to fundamentally change.
Pause a dramatic 2 seconds. I want you to take just a second and think about the devices surrounding you at this very moment. What if your TV, the one sitting completely silent in your living room, is listening to you right now? See, we all live with this comfortable assumption that a strong password or a turned-off screen equals privacy. But actually, that is a meticulously maintained illusion.
And this quote brilliantly illustrates the terrifying reality we're dealing with. According to John Kiriakou, who is a former highly accomplished CIA spy and counterterrorism chief, it literally doesn't matter if you've powered your devices down. The capability absolutely exists to remotely alter your hardware's primary function. They can turn a totally harmless speaker into a live transmission feed, catching every word you say.
Which brings us to Section 1. The illusion of privacy.
Until the year 2001, it was pretty much etched in stone that the intelligence community could not spy on Americans domestically. That was the rule. Today, billions of dollars are spent doing exactly that. In 2017, the sheer, staggering scale of this breach was exposed through something called Vault 7. Basically, a disgruntled CIA software engineer decided he had finally seen enough. But instead of selling these secrets to foreign adversaries, he downloaded tens of thousands of documents, stuff classified way above top secret, and just handed them to WikiLeaks. That leak completely pulled the curtain back, proving that our digital lives are entirely vulnerable, and worse, weaponized against us.
The specific capabilities confirmed by Vault 7 are frankly chilling. Beyond just hijacking your smart TV, operatives can actually remotely take control of a modern car's computer system. And why would they do that? To intentionally crash it. They can literally steer a target off a bridge or into a tree just to make an assassination look like a tragic accident. And perhaps the most cunning tactic of all, when they infiltrate foreign systems, they intentionally leave behind electronic clues written in Cyrillic code. The whole point is to falsely frame Russian hackers for their own work. It's an absolute global hall of mirrors.
Moving on to Section 2. Who exactly is John Kiriakou?
If you're going to expose the single most powerful intelligence agency on Earth, you need elite credentials, right? But first, we really have to look at how we, the public, have been conditioned. Over the last decade, the CIA actually opened a whole branch just to liaise with Hollywood studios. Their goal? Ensuring the agency is always depicted as the flawless hero in blockbuster movies like Zero Dark 30 or Argo. But Kiriakou's reality? It's vastly different. He describes a world operating in deep, murky legal and moral gray areas, where metadata is bought without warrants and everyday citizens are treated as targets.
And Kiriakou wasn't just some low-level analyst sitting at a desk. He spent 15 years inside the machine. At just 25 years old, he was already briefing the President of the United States in the Oval Office. Following 9/11, when the agency essentially received a blank check and an unlimited budget, he became the chief of counterterrorism operations in Pakistan. His literal job was infiltrating al-Qaeda. So, when he speaks, you're hearing from the ultimate insider.
Section 3. Dark Projects. MK Ultra.
Now, the hacking of modern digital devices, that's really just the latest iteration of a much, much darker legacy. Let's trace it back. In 1946, the Federal Torture Act clearly banned torture. But by 1952, panicked by what turned out to be false intelligence, the CIA launched MK Ultra. By 1973, facing a massive congressional investigation, the director ordered the mass destruction of all MK Ultra files to completely hide their crimes. Luckily, a tiny fraction of those documents accidentally survived. Fast forward to 2002, and those legal guardrails were entirely abandoned once again for secret post-9/11 torture programs. The law didn't actually change. The agency just decided once again that they were entirely above it.
Just look at the insane reality of MK Ultra through one of its subprojects, Operation Midnight Climax.
The CIA literally rented out safe houses in San Francisco. They paid sex workers to lure innocent, unsuspecting American citizens off the street. Once inside, these targets were secretly dosed with heavy amounts of LSD, while CIA agents literally sat behind one-way mirrors, drinking martinis and just observing the psychological breakdown of their own citizens. They were trying to erase personalities to see if they could rebuild them from scratch. And this wasn't just an isolated incident, guys. They also released experimental viruses into the San Francisco fog just to track the infection rates at local hospitals. American citizens were literally treated as disposable lab rats.
Let's look at Section 4, Recruitment Tactics.
Knowing they are capable of all this, how does an agency actually build its global network of spies? Well, they use a cold, highly calculated psychological framework called the asset acquisition cycle. First, you spot someone with access to secrets. Then, you assess their vulnerabilities, what the agency calls finding the hook. Next, you develop a relationship, sometimes over weeks of just exchanging nods in a foreign coffee shop to build trust. And finally, you recruit them. You convince them to betray their country. Kiriakou himself once spent weeks silently observing a mid-level Al-Qaeda fighter in a Pakistani cafe, slowly building that trust, before finally stepping in and offering the man exactly what he wanted most.
Pausa dramática de 2 segundos. So, what do you think actually motivates a person to commit treason? Is it ideology? Is it blackmail? The real answer is actually staggering. 95%.
Yeah, according to internal studies, 95% of the people who agree to become spies for the CIA do it purely for the money. It completely shatters that whole glamorous James Bond myth. It's almost never about grand ideologies or saving the world. It is a simple, raw cash transaction. You give me secrets, I give you money. In that post-9/11 world, Kiriakou noted that the budget was literally unlimited. To put that into perspective, one individual source was once paid $25 million in a single day just for information. But here's the catch. To facilitate these kinds of transactions and actively manipulate human beings on a daily basis, the CIA requires a very specific type of employee. They actively seek to hire individuals with sociopathic tendencies. Now, not full sociopaths, because full sociopaths can't pass a polygraph test. But they need people whose brains allow them to operate in these deep legal and ethical gray areas without feeling any crippling remorse. The agency needs people who will happily break international laws simply because they can convince themselves they are the good guys. This leads us to Section 5, the price of truth.
So what happens when one of those agents actually rediscovers their moral compass? Well, Kiriakou realized the agency's torture program wasn't just illegal and immoral, it also yielded absolutely zero actionable intelligence. When he decided to go on national television to expose this, the system completely crushed him. First, John Brennan pressured the Attorney General to charge Kiriakou under the Espionage Act, a charge that literally carries the death penalty. They dragged it out, waiting until he was completely bankrupted by over $2 million in legal fees. Facing a government that wins over 98% of its cases, he was forced to take a plea deal, ultimately spending 23 months in a federal prison. The message was clear: expose our crimes, and we will absolutely destroy your life.
Pausa dramática de 2 segundos. But honestly, despite losing his career, his finances, and his freedom, Kiriakou's resolve remains entirely unbroken. He said, "I would let them send me to prison again, because it was the right thing to do." He refused to show even a single ounce of remorse for telling the American public what was being done in their name, and that's incredibly powerful.
Finally, Section 6, what is yet to come?
Listen, we have only just scratched the surface here. Today, we've established that the digital world is compromised, that historical atrocities like MKUltra are very real, and that this agency operates with vast impunity. So ask yourself, if an organization is perfectly willing to release experimental viruses on its own citizens, secretly dose them with mind-altering drugs, and completely destroy their most decorated officers just for telling the truth, what else are they hiding in the shadows right now? What are foreign intelligence sleeper cells actually doing in your country as we speak? We are going to dive deep into the chilling truth about international espionage in Part 2 of this explainer. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.